All right, today we've got a really interesting one for you. We're going to crack open a legal case file. A homeowner versus his own HOA. This one's a doozy. Let's get right into it.
So, here's the setup. You've got one homeowner, one HOA, and a whopping 20 formal complaints. We're going to break this down just like a real investigation, looking at the claims, the back and forth, and of course, the final verdict from the judge.
Okay, first things first. Let's get to know the people involved and set the scene for how this whole thing kicked off.
So, on one side, we have the petitioner. That's just the legal term for the guy who filed the complaint, Mike P. Harris. And on the other side, we've got the respondent, which is the Pointe South Mountain Residential Association. They're the HOA on the receiving end of these accusations.
All right, so the case was officially filed back in December of 2006. But here's the real kicker, the detail that makes this whole thing so much more interesting. Mike Harris, the guy suing, wasn't just some random homeowner. He was a former director on the board. Yeah, he was suing the very same HOA board he used to be a part of. That, adds a whole lot of drama to the situation.
Okay, so let's dig into the first big category of complaints. And it's one that comes up all the time in these kinds of disputes. It's all about the money. The question was the HOA handling its finances properly? And the very first financial claim, the big one, revolved around this number, $50,000. The allegation was pretty serious, that the HOA had improperly invested the community's funds. But when the judge actually looked into it, the story wasn't quite what was claimed. Turns out the HOA treasurer made two separate investments, each for $25,000. The judge looked at the rules and found that, yep, the treasurer had the authority to do that. No board approval was needed for these specific investments. So that allegation didn't hold up. And this kind of set the tone for the other money-related complaints. There was another one about a mistaken land deed, but it was already corrected and nobody was harmed. A claim about the HOA not having the right insurance? Nope, they did. An argument that the HOA should have paid for the petitioner's lawyer? That got shut down too. It was like dominoes, one after another. The judge just wasn't finding any merit in these financial claims.
All right, let's switch gears to the next big chunk of allegations. This one's about the 2006 board election. And this is where it gets really personal, right? Because remember our guy Mike Harris? He was actually running in that election, and, well, he didn't win.
Okay, so the whole election fight really boiled down to this one specific rule in the HOA bylaws. It seems pretty straightforward. If you're 15 days late on your HOA dues for a property, you can't vote using that property's vote. Makes sense, right?
Well, hold on. Here's where it gets tricky. And this was the real heart of the disagreement. What if somebody owns multiple properties? Let's say you own 5 houses in the neighborhood and you're late on the dues for just one of them. Do you lose your vote for just that one house, or do you lose all 5 of your votes? That's the big question. And the judge laid it out very clearly. If you own multiple lots, but you're only behind on payments for one of them, your voting rights are suspended for that one lot only. You can still absolutely vote for all your other properties that are paid up and in good standing. So you're not totally out of the game.
So, we've gone through the money issues. We've picked apart the election rules. After sifting through all 20 of these allegations, what was the final verdict? What did the judge decide? Get this. Out of all 20 complaints, the judge only found the HOA was at fault for 2 things. Just 2. And they were pretty minor. First, they accidentally disqualified one ballot that should have been counted. And second, they gave a report to the petitioner one day later than they were supposed to. That's it. So you're probably wondering, what about that miscounted ballot? Did it matter? Well, the judge looked at that too, and the answer was, not really. Even if they had counted that one ballot correctly, it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the election at all. The results would have been exactly the same. So yeah, it was a mistake, but it didn't swing the election. And for the other 18 allegations? Well, here's the direct quote from the judge's decision. It says, the petitioner failed to sustain his burden of proof, which is basically legal speak for he didn't have the evidence. For the vast majority of his claims, he just couldn't prove his case. Okay, so the final tally is in. 18 allegations dismissed, 2 minor violations found. So, what happens now? What were the real-world consequences of all this?
Well, for Mike Harris, the petitioner, the news wasn't great because he lost on almost every single point. The court did not consider him the prevailing party. And what that means in practical terms is that he wasn't getting his $550 filing fee back. That was money out of his own pocket.
And what about the HOA? What was their punishment for those 2 slip-ups?
They received what's called an admonishment. That sounds serious, but it's really just a formal warning. It's like the judge wagging a finger and saying, hey, be more careful next time. Make sure you count the ballots right and get your paperwork done on time. It's basically a slap on the wrist.
And so that's where this whole thing lands, which leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? You have this massive legal fight with 20 different accusations, tons of time and energy spent, and it all ends with a warning, a slap on the wrist. When you think about all the cost, the lawyers, the stress on the community, who really wins in a situation like this?